My friends often ask me, how can I match these colors or what can I wear for that particular situation? And of course, I understand very well because this dynamic of getting dressed is something that we all do every single day. Now, of course, this action of dressing ourselves can be done in a very elementary way, putting something on the body just to cover the nudity, or we can try to go a step further and elevate the original meaning of this action to manifest the uniqueness of our perspective, just as we do in cooking or in architecture, for example. I'm Fred, and I have been working as a fashion editor and fashion stylist for almost 20 years now, and today I'm here to try to build a bridge between curiosity and practicality when it comes to dressing. So if you're also looking for an improvement that you can control through the art of non-verbal communication, welcome. Each person has different needs and each body part has different characteristics. So covering, decorating and furnishing a body in a pleasing way every day can prove to be a challenge. And since over the years as a fashion stylist, I have already come across many of these obstacles, I thought I could share this experience with you as well. When it comes to dressing ourselves every day, the temptation to throw everything on us as quickly as possible is so strong because the main purpose is to cover up and to get out. We already have other commitments on our minds and maybe we are already running late. But as far as we know, to get a good result in whatever discipline, it would be helpful to plan ahead, do research, and then with diligence get interesting results. But I also understand that it can be seen by many not as a priority, especially when we have always been told that clothes don't make the man, or that there are other more important things in life. But being basically social animals, shouldn't communication in all its facets be among the topics to which we pay a little bit more attention? If you think about it, from the moment that we have a phone or a computer, we are visually communicated not only with the real person in front of us, but potentially with the whole world connected to the internet. But first, allow me to make a premise. As I said at the beginning, identifying our personal style through styling is an art form. The art of dressing is the improvement of a basic need, just like others, for example. First of all, there is the need for nourishment, assimilating foods that are essential for the body. Then, if this action is done in a certain way, guided by experience, it becomes the pleasure of eating, the culinary art. Or we need a minimum of a roof and 4 basic walls to shelter us from the weather. But if this is done following a certain aesthetic, then this becomes the art of interior design or the beauty of architecture in general. In the same way, originally we have to cover ourselves for more practicality, but also for survival, depending on the climate we were facing. But when that primitive action of covering ourselves is done by seeking a correlation between the alignment of our personality with what we think of ourselves and what we actually see in the mirror, that's when we begin to see the psychological, emotional, and creative benefits that non-verbal communication, aka personal style or styling, has on us. It's an approach we can start consider when we are ready to elevate the quality of the reality we want to experience. So we understand that devoting time and will to this art form depends only on individual stories and, of course, personal experiences. That being said, I also totally understand that initial curiosity when they ask me styling questions, because you can sense that depending on a certain choice, we can discover new sides of our personalities, like when we learn a new language, for example. This reflects our instincts to want to be even slightly better than yesterday, seeking fresh perspective to apply to the actions we already do every day. And that's what I like to do here. Discover together new ways of interacting with something we already have in our closets, while still staying true to our personal interests. But often when we talk about optimizing our wardrobe, we immediately think about only the minimalist approach, which also works of course, but is not the only way. We will never find one visual language that fits all, that is universal. So when I hear about essentials or advice given as absolute truth, the whole thing seems so strange to me. Because if we talk about personal style, how can we fit everyone inside one tutorial thought? To think for ourselves, we must first rediscover the pleasure of dressing, understand its benefits, and have a positive approach. But that only comes if something speaks directly to me, reflecting my taste, like when we choose what to eat or how to furnish in our home. But I know in everyday life, we don't want to spend too much time deciding what to wear, right? Because otherwise we end up choosing the same things over and over again. Kind of like me when it comes to choose a pizza. But the point is precisely this. How can I approach a world that at first may seem far away from me to understand? Life takes place in daily activities. So I would like to focus on how to apply styling in everyday life so we can embrace a new skill. That's the main reason for this project. I think this experience can also be interesting in the company of someone who already has just a little more practice in this field, and especially who also nowadays is doing research every day. Yeah, it's my obsession. Just like we do when we are looking for cooking advice. At least I do that. I definitely try to hear the perspective of someone who has a genuine passion about it. Because creativity freedom, yes, but just as in cooking or furnishing, there are customs and rules that are there to guide us, to make us a favor, if only to avoid making basic mistakes that someone has already made and we don't want to make as well, so that we can better invest our time. I find coherent the dynamic of first understanding the elements that are part of a theme and then play with it more instinctively, freely, as it should be. In fact, that's the goal. I know a lot of people would like to take a first step, but it's often not clear to understand how. Partly because the style reference that we find on some platforms, they're often a bit far from us. Maybe everything is too fashionable, a little too dressy, too sporty, or too avant-garde. Interesting and fascinating, but it becomes difficult to figure out how to translate that onto us. And I often find myself there too. This is also why I would like to bring the focus back to our personal inspirations and not just trends per se. Our inspirations, though seemingly unconnected, are actually an extraordinary source of input and opportunity. Therefore, before I begin, I wanted to make this video in which I summarize some of the visual inspirations that have been with me to date and in some way pay homage to them, because they also tell a little bit about the multitude of interests in all of us, of the complexity that we share. And trust me, we are not starting from scratch, because even if you think you know little or nothing about style, you know at least enough to have chosen what you already have on you today. But why styling? What is that? Styling is the result of the choice of individual garments and accessories that in their totality create our image. It's the thought, it's the representation we communicate. And it's important to think about this because often the real difficulty lies right here in the context. Context makes the whole difference in terms of styling our bodies, as clothing is rarely enjoyed in isolation. And it can be easy to forget about all of these other items that we need to consider for a pleasant result. For example, it's not just about figuring out which sweatshirt is in fashion today and buying it to look good, because what do you really see at the end? On a person, you see a totality of different elements put together, also made up of details. You don't see just a sweatshirt floating around by itself. It's the ensemble that makes the difference.
The length of a hemline, the volume of a sleeve, the movement of a fabric.
It's the variety of these details and the awareness in choosing them that make the difference between an aesthetic result that enhances us and one that only serves to cover the body. Same action, two totally different results. With the internet and the decentralization of media, we have more opportunities to talk about the issue. And it's exciting because it's a great opportunity to connect professionals and enthusiasts with people who want to approach and learn how best to express themselves non-verbally too. Also because one of our innermost desires as human beings is to want to be seen, to be recognized by those who are important to us. But in order to be seen, we must first literally show ourselves. And we all would like to be seen as interesting and even potentially nice and attractive people. And this is not a sin or synonymous of shallowness or superficiality. In fact, it's something that our brains also need to keep in balance that correlation between what I feel, what I think, and what I see. And I would like to remind you one more thing. Always, 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 the most attractive look will be the most authentic one, because authenticity is universally attractive and it has nothing to do with our size, age, or how much we spend on our clothes. All of that is irrelevant. In communication, the important thing is that it comes across as authentic, because it's something that you not only see, but more importantly, you feel. What matters is the resonance you create. And in fact here, we will look for clothes that can resonate well with us. We will look for a match, a sympathetic relationship between the clothes and the person who is wearing them, trying to have as much control as possible over the message to be expressed. In fact, I find it really fascinating how the action of dressing is not only important on a creative level, but also how related it is to a more primitive aspect of our species, in that our brains in automatic scans everything and makes an analysis of what it sees, nonverbal communication, and it immediately gets an idea, creates a judgment. It always creates visual and emotional associations to be able to understand in a few seconds who we have in front of us. And all this has to do with the oldest part of our brain. The reptilian brain, in fact, had to ensure our survival and in fraction of seconds understand whether what was in front of us was good or bad, whether to stay or run, friend or foe. The famous fight or flight effect related to our more animal instinct. So as with the most automatic actions our body do, forming an opinion is something unconscious and automatic, a neuronal action that is part of each of us. So why not also to try to understand better an action that even if unconsciously has such a strong impact on us? Then sure, consciously judging someone exclusively by the clothes they have, that I don't find particularly nice either, but that depends only on personal values given by family, education, or the level of empathy we have. And speaking of bias and prejudice, in fact, I would also like us to review together the commonly held misconception about this field, often only related to superficiality or empty people who has nothing better to do than to appear dressed. Well, there are exceptions in every field, yeah? But generalizing a concept is always a problem, right? Or even worse, that typical patriarchal idea in which the intention of wanting to dress well is something only for girls, also always said in a somewhat derogatory way. So it happens that a man tried to put a minimum effort in communicating better his personality. That's the moment, immediately, when someone starts making comments or doubting their sexuality as if it had anything to do with that. And such a narrow view of life, unfortunately, comes not only from men, but also from women. Therefore, it's important to understand where the problem comes from before wanting to solve it. Because this limits the freedom of human expression, and not only of those we judge, but especially our own. We limit ourselves. But thank goodness there are generational changes that brings progress, as also history teaches, really at least to question what was previously taken for granted. And this kind of generational emotional intelligence is not related only to a young age per se, but especially to the level of empathy and tolerance that is developed through respect and curiosity. And in that context, here I would like to do my little part and challenge myself as well, trying to communicate as practically as I can what I know on the subject. Often to learn something new, we must first unlearn. In order to learn, sometimes we have to take apart the prepackaged ideas we have made by all limiting ideologies. In fact, we can use the benefits of neuroplasticity in this aspect of our lives too. Styling in the search for a personal style is not in fact changing the person you are for a cooler version. Rather, it's finding your visually eye, which is unique. It's not moving away from you, but it's reconnecting with you. And trust me, that also has nothing to do with the money or the budget that you have or you want to give yourself to buy something to wear. The point is to change the paradigm by which we see clothes. If you know you are a special being, why not treat yourself that way? If you know that you deserve the best, why do you still not visualize that when you see yourself in the mirror? And by best, I don't mean just fancy, expensive clothes, but I mean doing our best with what we already have, at least to begin with. And we can begin with something that is clean, maybe in good condition and in our size. I know it may seem obvious, but it's not. Trust me, not at all. This is a controllable action to train the mind and start manifesting the reality you want to experience, creating a visual and emotional coherence between how you see yourself and what you really see. And trust me, as a rule, there are no ugly, basic clothes. It's just that we often don't know how to match them to enhance ourselves. The technical part is quite a lot of work, I have to admit, but that's up to me. Don't worry. I like this kind of non-verbal communication. It really fascinates me to recognize, read the garments as communication tools, as letters in a visual alphabet. On your side, you should just identify what's your mindset. What is the approach you have on this issue? And possibly review it as another priority to be taken into consideration as a way of communication. Bene, sorry for the long speech, definitely less fashionable, but I'm convinced that we must understand the why of things before we start considering a new perspective to embrace. Okay, I will stop here today. Thank you for making it this far, and I hope this video has been helpful in resonating at least a little bit with your curiosity. And if you think this project, although in early stages, might also be of interest to someone you know, I invite you to share this link around. I just found out that leaving a like or subscribing to the channel and maybe sharing a video is not merely related to the person creating the content, but more importantly and especially allows the algorithm to get this information to more people with similar tastes and interests to yours and mine, making it more feasible to also connect with other people and build a community of like-minded and curious internet explorers. So see you next time, and in the meantime, remember who you are.